Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Well, time of every month we have our friends from Spence Clarke joining us, and once again today we are going to be talking about we've had death, and we're going to have with Neil, and now we're going to have taxes. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be back again.
Yes, it's been a while, and good morning to you too, sir. How are you this morning?
Good morning.
Yeah, as always. Well, here we are again today.
Before you start, it's Fran's birthday.
Fran, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
If I'd known, I would have bought a cake. But as it's your birthday, what I will do, I'll do this.
I told the office that I was going to embarrass him a little.
Yeah, well, you've managed to do that. He's blushing. He's blushing. So, are you going to have a cake later? Perhaps, a clown, maybe a clown. Yeah. It's been a while. How have you been?
Everything is well. The commencement of the year has been a little chaotic.
Yeah.
Not in Spain, but look at Maduro on the 3rd of January, all the things that have been happening, Iran and Groenlandia before with that threat. So everything is convulsed.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
When I saw the other day that petrol went up hugely by 40%, I thought to myself, Miguel Ángel, it's good to have an electric car. So, which I bought 2 years ago.
No, okay. I just like to have a working car. For me, that's the thing I want more than anything else.
Now things will get better.
Please. Yes, indeed. So today we're going to talk about something that's very expert. Now I remember these. I think when I was trying to buy property in the 90s. You were too young because you're a child. But everybody said, we've got to have a company. Used to get the companies out of Gibraltar. So everybody used to get their property through like a Gibraltar. But today we're talking about a holding company. It sounds really, really sort of professional. What holding company? What exactly are we talking about here?
It sounds very expert, but it is somehow simpler than it seems, because we see that every day. You would have heard many people saying, I've got a group of companies, my grupo. So it is no more than a company that sits on top of everything, and then you have other companies we call subsidiaries that are owned and controlled by the main one. No? Basically, a holding company is a company itself which main activity is to own shares in other companies that are going to do business activities, different business activities.
Right.
In other words, this holding company is not going to manufacture anything, is not going to sell anything to the public. Just simply is owning and managing other companies that are doing different business activities. And this is very useful, and it is ideal when people want to have different business activities and they want to diversify the risks so that each company is dealing what is doing without interfering in what the others are doing.
So
this sounds like a trabalenguas.
Yeah. So,
but it's helpful for inheritance, to, as I said, diversify business, protect your assets, and of course, tax planning optimization.
So, but just a quick, if you've got a holding company, you don't physically need an office or a plate on the wall to say this is the holding company, this is the holding of Giles Brown Holdings. No, you don't need that.
Well, you have to have some degree of business structure.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously,
but physically, I mean, in terms of
it's not needed, because basically the role of the holding company is to manage the participation that you have in other businesses.
Okay, so the main things are the tax advantages. So, what are the tax advantages of having a holding company?
Many, and there are two very important ones. Just imagine that Giles Brown Group wants to have a restaurant, so you set up a company that is going to do that business activity, and you also want to have a car dealer, you want to have a hotel business activity, so you want to have different activities yourself or with other investors, no? And each of them is having its own structure, is doing its own activity, and it's making profits. This is why we try to set up companies and carry out activities. When you want to repay the dividends from your subsidiaries to your holding company, you do not have to declare that dividend as your income in your holding company. It is basically exempt at 95%.
Okay.
It used to be 100%, but the government changed that a few years ago, but it is still extremely helpful. So imagine that you have 100,000 euros of profits in your restaurant activity, and you say, I want to receive a dividend. So you transfer the dividend after paying corporation tax back to your holding company, and you do not have to declare that 100,000 euros as your income because it's exempt at 95%. So you only have to pay corporation tax at that remaining 5%.
Okay, so just say that one more time. So I've got 100,000.
Yeah.
And so I don't pay corporation tax then. I pay corporation tax after I've transferred.
You pay corporation tax in the company that has done the activity,
right?
Which is the restaurant, for example.
Yeah.
But then the dividend, the profit after paying taxes, you can transfer it to your holding company as dividend.
Yeah.
Virtually paying only 5% extra tax.
Okay.
That's it. And then when you want to take money out for you to receive dividends is when you have to pay your personal taxes. But there is no obligation for you to receive any dividends in your personal pocket. You can use that money that you are holding in your holding company just to finance other business activities or use that money as new capital to set up other business activities. So you are deferring. You are maximizing the possibility of deferring the obligation to pay taxes in your personal pocket.
Okay.
And the same when you want to sell any of your shares in your business companies. Imagine that you say, okay, the car dealer, I've got a very good offer to sell it to someone else. Yeah. They are giving me a very good deal. Okay, I sell it. Yeah. My holding company sells that Spanish company. And again, only 5% of that profit is subject to taxes in my holding company.
So you are, if you like, so you're rerouting via
exactly.
Okay.
This is why it sounds complicated, but everything has to be checked on a case-to-case basis. But all this makes that, from a tax point of view, the overall taxation, personal and company, is the lowest possible, and according to Spanish legislation.
So the other tax advantages, inheritance, gift tax, that sort of thing. So what have we got there?
Yeah, a holding company can be very helpful in the planning of a family business, especially in relation of two taxes. Inheritance tax and gift tax and wealth tax. In Spain, when shares in a family business are transferred, for example, from parents to children in inheritance, a reduction of up to 95% of the value may be applied, provided that certain requirements are met. Yeah. The more important condition or requirements are as follows: that the owner has a minimum shareholding in the company, normally 5% individually or 20% together with the family group. Second, the company must carry out a real economic activity and not to be merely a property company. Third, a member of the family must perform management functions in the company and receive remuneration for this that represents a significant part of the income.
Basically, being a director of the company.
So you can't just go, you can't just say, I'm involved with how are you involved with the company? You
Everything in Spain requires conditions that you have to strictly meet.
Yeah, I just love the thing. It's
I'll give you an example that everybody may know. Amancio Ortega is one of the
richest man.
One of those. The top richest person in Spain. He owns Inditex, Zara.
Zara.
And so this is what he's having. He's having a holding company that is managing all the business that he has worldwide, including the Zara business in Spain, plus many others. That means that when his daughter is going to inherit all the shares that she's going to take from her father, as the family is going to meet all these requirements, she will not have to pay inheritance tax because 95% of that will be exempt. So if she's going to inherit 10 trillions of euros or gazillions, only 5% of the value of that company will be subject to inheritance tax. This is why, apart from the taxation of elements, it's also very useful to manage the family business and preparing that for the future. Just imagine that you had to inherit your parents' business and you have to pay up to 40% in inheritance tax, it would be crazy, no?
Yeah.
And the conditions also, they are quite long. They are not difficult to manage. Simply being a director of the company, receiving a remuneration consisting of being the director of the company, owning at least 5%. So all these things are easy to comply with. But they have to be demonstrated to the tax office.
I just saw this. Your second point, it must have a real economic activity and not be merely a property company. I mean,
as always, yes. Let's not forget that you can have an activity that consists of purchase, rent, and sell properties. But according to Spanish income tax law and corporation tax law, it is only a business if you have at least one employee, employed full-time, that is doing the role and the jobs related to that activity. Yeah. And you have to demonstrate that that person is necessary and essential to be employed, so that it is regarded as a business activity.
And also that the beneficiaries have to stay in the company for a while. You can't just go in 3 days before and then come out 3 days later and go, okay.
Exactly. You have to be a minimum of time. So basically, for wealth tax, it's all exactly the same. And the same example as the owner of Inditex, Amancio Ortega. He virtually pays almost nothing in wealth tax in Spain. You know that in several regions in Spain, if you own more than 700,000 euros of net worldwide assets, you have to start paying wealth tax. So if you have this group of companies, you have your holding company that is managing all your different business activities, then provided that you comply with the same conditions as what we have said for inheritance, then that part is also virtually exempt from wealth tax. So you can be valued gazillions of euros and you only pay very little.
So there are conditions for the wealth tax then about the taxpayer has to have a minimum stake? 15 individually? No, that's the okay. So basically, the holding company is basically used to pay less tax.
Yeah, same conditions and for inheritance. You have to own minimum 5% of the share capital of the group, business activities on all the underlying companies, and you have to be a director and receiving a substantial remuneration for being director.
Right. Okay. So are we looking at this basically? So we're looking for this as a holding company, basically we're paying less tax on this one, yeah?
Yes, but not only. Also, it's a very powerful tool from a tax point of view, provided that it is planned by a tax expert and does not breach regulations. Yeah. So everything needs to be analyzed in a case-to-case basis. However, it also has other advantages beyond that, as it allows risks to be separated. Yeah. If a subsidiary has financial problems, it does not affect to the rest of the group, and that's so positive. It also facilitates business succession in a family group. The entry of investors and the transfer of business, the transfer of the shares. Colloquially, we could say that it is like an umbrella and protects and organize family assets and business from a long term.
Right. So again, we're saying that so even if this one part of my business has one part of my umbrella has a problem, it's not going to affect.
Exactly. Okay. Not affect to the other companies.
So let's go back to my huge emporium. Giles Brown Holding Company. I've got my hospitality business, and I've got a logistic business. I mean, if I've got those two businesses separate, they're not the same business, they're not same activity. Is it going to be beneficial for me to have a holding company?
Yes, it could be very interesting, especially from a tax perspective. If you are the director owner of both companies and one distributes dividends, that money goes to you as an individual and it's subject to the taxation of the personal income tax in Spain. Yeah. However, if there is a holding company between them, those dividends can go to the holding company with virtually 0% taxation. Okay. This allows you to reinvest the profit of the companies from one company in the other or in a new project without first going through your personal taxation as a personal individual. What's more, if you ever decide to sell the shares of your company, approximately 95% of the capital gains may be exempt, within the holding company, leaving that the capital available for further reinvestment.
So this is a really good thing if you want to invest money from one of your businesses into another business, because you're not going to be hit with that tax hit straight away.
It works, and as Fran just said before, it is a long-term planning. You cannot set holding companies ad hoc. Because it's suitable for everyone. It is because it's a part of a long-term investment strategy, and also bringing opportunities and creating security in case of insolvency, in case of any crisis, that you can diversify. The typical expression of not having all my eggs in the name.
In the basket.
Exactly, in the same basket, no? So it's not only taxation. It is lots of things. Just imagine, for example, say, if you don't have a holding company, I've got a profit, I receive the money as dividends. If I was the individual shareholder, I have to pay taxes, and then I have to lend the money to another company opportunity and then pay more taxes for that. I mean, if you have the holding company, you are avoiding taxation in your pocket, and you are using that money to directly reinvest in other companies that need a little more financial muscle, or just simply to set up another different businesses. So it's good for finance and taxation.
How does the holding company get taxed then? Is it the same as a normal company then, or?
It is exactly the same as a normal company, but logically, if you are able to receive all the income from the company by way of capital gains for selling other underlying companies, or receiving dividends from these companies, then you have the 95% exemption. Right. So basically, 25% on 5% is almost nothing. It is negligible, no? You only have to pay the typical up to 25% corporation tax if those companies are able or capable or generate any other type of income, or if, because of the structure of your group of companies, if you, for example, own 3% of another business, as you are owning less than 5%, which is the minimum requirement, that amount will be taxed in full.
Okay.
Right? So you are able to manage on how you want or you can pay corporation tax.
And I mean, presumably there are sort of conditions to meet.
Yes, you need. Siempre hay.
The look on his
condiciones.
face. Of
yes,
course. But.
No, you need to keep the shares of those investments of your underlying companies for a minimum of 12 months, 1 year. This is to avoid the speculation of buy and selling short term quickly and generate money.
Okay. So as we said before, So we're looking at. I keep saying it can't be a property company in some of the notes, but you can't just buy the shares then in one day and sell them the next. You can't speculate.
Well, you can, but you cannot get your 95% tax exemption. So you always have to assume that. Again, holding companies are designed, as Fran said, long-term planning, but also you always have to figure in your mind that you always have to have valid economic reasons. And these are the key magical words, because everything is nowadays scrutinized by the tax authorities. No? So you always have to be able to demonstrate that you are complying with all the rules and that there are always valid economic reasons. Same as with holding companies, you can have restructuring operations like mergers, acquisitions, decisions, and all these arrangements are 100% tax neutral, as long as you can demonstrate valid economic reasons that motivate such restructuring.
So, I mean, this is designed then for sort of stable, strategic investors then, basically.
Sin duda.
Okay. What about the shareholders? I mean, if I'm a shareholder in the company, how can I withdraw money from that holding company, Fran?
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Okay.
Because if a shareholder wants to take money out for the company, that's when the income tax comes into play. Right. The holding company pays corporation tax, but when the company has a profit and want to be distributed to the shareholders, they are taxed on their personal income tax at a progressive tax rate of 19 to 30%.
So, I mean, some people might think that setting up a holding company is a good way to, I have beaten Hacienda. Look how clever I am. I'm getting past this. So, but as you said, they're They're not stupid, but this is legal, yeah?
Yeah, it's completely legal. It's a structure provided for and regulated by the Spanish law. It's a different matter if it is used abusively, but if it's not done with the real economic sense. The tax authorities accept it without any problem. In fact, big companies have been doing it for many years. What has changed is that it now also available for pymes.
Right, so pymes are smaller businesses,
small, medium-sized companies, which is 95% of the number of companies we have in Spain.
Yeah, but before this was always seen as somebody, if you had Grupo Zara, if you were a group...
Yeah, exactly. People think that group companies or holding companies are only valid for large companies, banks, etc., but anyone can have a holding company if they have different businesses, if they have a family who they want to give want to separate the business activities between them, as we have said, for succession tax, for wealth tax saving, if you want to have a more financial muscle without having to go to banks to borrow money.
Sure.
If you have everything in your holding company, which also acts as your bank, as your finance entity, then you can distribute your cash flow surplus just to give more financial power to the other activities that really need it.
Or
to buy a nice house, why not? Set up your patrimonio mobiliario within the group of companies.
Right, okay. You could do that as well, yeah? You could do that as well.
But again, valid economic reasons always have to be there. The tax office is always very conscious of the principles of economic substance, right? The business, the economic activity always have to be more important than the potential tax savings.
Yeah.
This is one of the big principles of the tax authorities when they look into this type of structures. But again, it is very easy to manage with the right advice. And
you see, this is the thing. This, for me, I'm thinking here, this isn't like you go online and you tick a few boxes and boom, you have a whole... You need specific advice.
Exactly.
It's not something I can do on the go online and have a course and click that box and hey, I have a holding company.
Every person, every family, they have their own background pictures, circumstances, short-term to medium-term arrangements, and therefore everything needs to be analyzed to not only check what is the tax saving today, but also what benefits you are going to have in the long term. It is the same as when you have a company. Typical case of, should I trade as an autonomo? Should I use a Spanish company? Well, those decisions are not always have to be focused on tax savings. It's also what are your expectations and your planning in the long term.
So, who do you think we should? Who do you recommend to be setting up a holding company then?
To be honest, I would recommend that if someone wants to consider setting up a business, setting up a Spanish company, have different business activities, I would honestly recommend them to contact Spence Clarke.
Yeah, well, obviously. But I mean, the good thing is this is long-term planning.
Yes.
We tend to always say, okay, this has happened now. You know, the tax office has said this. It's coming into operation next week. This is what you have to do. This is encouraging people to think long-term, but also to reinvest in their business. So this is actually quite, this is helping businesses, if you like.
And it provides protection, by all meanings, from inheritance, from insolvency, from cash flow problems and needs. It gives you all the tools to manage different business activities under the same umbrella.
And also, I mean, with the inheritance, the transfer of shares, this is always going to be useful because, again, this can be a big problem as later on in life, and the with a family business, you can use it for property as well, but it's mainly for your family business. If I've got Giles Brown Holdings and I want to pass it on to, I was going to say my son, but that's unlikely. But if I want to pass it on to a family relative or something, it's going to take away, it's going to give you tax benefits rather than just letting Hacienda get out.
Exactly, from day one. There are lots of rules, but not difficult to manage and comply with.
And again, like, just go back. It doesn't matter what size of business you are. So I could have a bicycle shop on one hand, and I could have a restaurant on the other, and we could be literally one place in San Pedro, the other one in Estepona. Doesn't matter. We can still use that, so I can get some new bike tires.
Absolutely, because it's not always advisable to have one single company dealing with different activities.
Yeah.
Sometimes one of those are subject to VAT, others are VAT exempt. Then you create a massive problems in terms of regularizations, and you are never going to get any sort of protection. Just imagine having two activities in the same company. One of those goes very bad, the other goes very well. How can you differentiate one to the other? How can you get finance from banks if your balance sheet looks not very healthy because one of the others are not doing well? So you separate the companies. There's a little extra cost because each company requires its setup cost and its running, but in the long term it will definitely pay dividends.
It's something to look at, isn't it? Very seriously, if you've got businesses and you want to plan to the future.
Absolutely, and it's important to do it now before you increase the size of your structure, because doing arrangements afterwards, you cannot apply for any exemption. So
if people, we've only got 50 seconds left because we've been talking about this so much, but if people want to find out more information about this...
50 seconds only, I will talk faster.
Okay, so we've got 40 seconds, so quick.
Okay, contact Spence Clarke, 952-822943. Visit our website, spenceclarke.com. There are plenty of guidelines, free articles for you to check, and always... please feel free to phone us, send us an email. I'm happy to help.
Well, I knew nothing about this before we did this interview, but that's a really interesting and I think a really positive one. So happy birthday, Fran. Take it easy.
Thank you, Dad.
And
forgot to say there will be an article in our website to explain this in a little more detail.
Marvellous, which is spenceclarke.com. Right then, Miguel Ángel, as always, great to have you in the studio.